What's up, guys? So today we have the woman, myth, legend, Jada Thoele. She is a strong name in the lending space inside of Sub 2, hard money. And today we're going to talk about the number one mistake made in co-living lending. So Jada, where are you located? I know you moved recent.
Yeah, no, I'm in Houston, Texas right now.
Awesome. And from what I remember, you were what? You're the first year you joined Sub 2's first year,
Oh
second
man,
year?
second year I think. I joined back in like late 2021.
Okay, so you've definitely seen it grow, evolve, blossom, all that.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I think when I joined there was maybe 4,000 people compared to the what 16,000 now. That's
Yeah,
insane.
16, 17, something like that. Okay, so, all right. Before we dive into co-living lending, I just kind of want to touch on how did you find Sub 2? It's not cheap to get in. You're obviously still very active in it.
Hmm.
And now you're doing a lot of different types of hard money, like the Burr model, rehab, DSCRs. I know you're building a brand around DSCRs, is what I've seen. But let's rewind a little bit. How did you like? You're pretty young. How did you get into sub two in your early like what were you, 20, 21,
Yeah, I was
22?
21. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so it wasn't anything crazy. I feel like some people have like a life-changing thing, but for me, I was going to college. I was going for mechanical engineering, and it was during COVID and the lockdowns, and so we were learning online at one point, and I just didn't feel like it was suitable for the education that I actually wanted if I was going to go into that field. And so after a while, I felt more like I was just going to school just to go to school. I didn't feel like I was ready if I were to join the work field or the workspace in that field. And so I was kind of disillusioned. I pretty sure I saw some Instagram girl that said, I have a rental property at 18 years old. And I thought, well, I could do that. And so I started watching a lot of videos in regards to, or with real estate attorneys talking about LLC structure and rental housing and such. And then one of them had Pace on his podcast. And, and it wasn't necessarily subject to or seller finance that got me in. Like, I think that's, his hook. But for me, when he said I help people get out of foreclosure, that was the thing that made me take the leap and say, okay, I'm going to join Sub 2 because it was actually more servant minded, it felt like. And more into the logistics of how I joined, they had a payment plan option. And I said, let's do it. But I had, I think, one credit card. And so I put, the first payment on there. And I immediately got a job at Olive Garden. I was not
Mhm.
taking any chances thinking, I'll just get a deal and pay it off. I went, no, I'm going to go actively pay it off now. And then when I get that paid off, then I'll quit Olive Garden and just go full in, which is what I did.
Okay. So when you joined, did you like keep a pretty narrow focus on the foreclosures or how did what was that kind of because I know inside of sub two it may at face value seem like okay, you joined sub two to learn how to do sub two deals.
Yep.
But the reality is it's this massive ecosystem that includes business buying, fix and flip, new construction, RV parks, mobile homes, like pretty much everything you could think of. So did you start with the foreclosure and then move to something else that caught your eye even more, had more interest, or
Nope. I didn't even start with foreclosure, which is hilarious. I just that everybody was saying, if you're new, just start with wholesaling. So I just me and some other newbies created a wholesaling team and had VAs, and it was just a whole learning experience. But no, I definitely went through that whole shiny object syndrome, and maybe I mean, it's kind of different than shiny object. Like shiny object, I feel this is kind of working, but this is also maybe possibly going to work. At least with when you're new and just starting out, you're just looking at other things and you're trying to figure out where is the place that I'm going to stay. So that's more of what I did. And I did wholesaling, I did dispositions, I did a lot of PML and connector kind of positions until I sat in a pretty good wholesaling team. And then I figured out that I didn't really care for wholesaling, and that I ended up working with the partners that I work with now. They're hard money lenders. And so I was a loan officer for them for quite a while. And that was what I enjoyed. Um, especially just being the loan officer and not necessarily being in charge of processing the files at that time. It just felt like my whole job was to go out and talk to people. And I could not ask for anything more than that. That's so fun. I love that part.
It's funny, you brought up a good point. I think there's a really big misconception when people first join, they're looking for what works. But the reality is several things work. It's not that one is better than the other. It's more so like what resonates with the individual
Hmm.
that determines success. Okay, so you're focused on hard money now. Would you say the main thing that you're doing now is like DSCRs, or like what are you like ultra focused on? What do you have on your whiteboard?
Yep.
Like what is your, that 12 month goal kind of thing?
Yeah, no, now it's the DSCRs. So I started out as a loan officer in the hard money lending field. But it was soon after that they mentioned, hey, we don't have a DSCR department. And that's kind of a natural progression as people start flipping properties, they want to start holding them, or maybe, you know, and so that's where we ended up partnering on a DSCR company. And so that is like my focus. I'm definitely, at least right now, not somebody that wants to have a lot of multiple businesses and think, oh, well, vertical integration, we should just have a TC company. No, I'm only focusing on the DSCR. I can help with the hard money and like new construction loans, yes. But if I'm going to be known for something, I would rather it be that.
Yeah, it's funny. So I think it depends on everyone. You'll hear some people say they like multiple things all at once. But for me personally, every time I've ever just narrowed focus to one thing and like
Yeah.
just dominated it and like stubbornly pursued it until I got results, it
Hmm.
works each time. But if I try to do, 3 to 5 things at once, they're like all mediocre. That's just me though.
Yeah.
Um, so with DSCRs, fast forwarding a bit to co-living, are you seeing a change in like are you doing co-living DSCRs? Are you doing a blend of just regular rentals or what kind of what's on your plate like for the month of August, for example?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely been a blend. For August, we haven't gotten any co living loans. Um, and I appreciate being transparent on that. But
Mhm.
so while we're not getting the loans, we are getting some lenders that are more and more open to co-living. Now, when it comes to co-living and DSCRs, it can be just, I think whoever's in the space knows that it's a little wonky because with the co-living model, generally you're adding more bedrooms. And so that'll kind of it's not necessarily helping the appraisal. The appraisal is going to have a difficult time finding comps, and then the lenders are going to have a difficult time trying to, use not only the comps that the appraisal gave you, but also see what kind of rent they're getting. So I'm more and more. I see a lot of our lenders that are kind of fixing their guidelines. A lot of lenders that are shifting it maybe to not be as favorable, but at least they're not completely dissing the co-living model.
Okay. So in 2 weeks, we're going to actually start teaching the co-living semesters 201. We're doing
Okay.
case studies. It's going to be 9 weeks. Um, 3 different case studies. The first one, though, in our opinion, it's the most simple. Like if someone wants to start, is just buying an existing co-living property. Like it's already been running a year, 2, 3 years. Um, so how easy would you say it is to get one of those DSCRs? Like there's a T12, there's a track record, all of it. Like, is that possible with the lenders you have access to? And then if so, what's the criteria they're looking for?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. Uh, the criteria generally for co-living or short-term rental, sometimes mid-term rental, is just that you have a 12-month track record and you have a 12-month transaction history. Now, while it may be relatively simple now to get this loan, always know that lenders' criterias are ever shifting, as I've learned, and they'll just have the wackiest things that come out at times. But But yeah, that's generally what they want to see. Now, with some of the lenders, also, I would say to be on the safe side, whoever is going to be guaranteeing the loan, so the borrowing guarantor, if you have a 680 credit score and above, then you're pretty solid. You're giving yourself the best chance possible. A lot of people will, and I will say, we have lenders that can go down to 600 in your credit score, but then your LTV is dropping, your interest rate is super high. And especially if you're trying to do an additional thing like bringing in a co living deal, it could just, sometimes the underwriters are a little too scared, isn't the word, but maybe a little too frugal with in at least our eyes. And so if you're kind of throwing all these like red flag, like orange flags ish, they'll probably not work with it. So 680 credit score, 12-month track history, I think that's pretty solid.
Okay. And then do they need a certain number of existing rentals or owning a homestead, anything like that?
I would say again, to be on the safe side, just one would be good, but not every lender needs one. I think I have one. I'm just going to say one. Just be on the safe side. Pretty sure they are going to be shifting those guidelines.
Okay. So 680 credit score, um, at least one property. The property needs to have been stabilized at least 12 months. What is the next major, if anything, this little box that needs to be checked just to make sure everyone feels comfortable going into the deal, maybe before they put EMD down, like that kind
Mm.
of stuff?
I would. I'm trying to think if there's anything. What have you seen? Because I know that you've actually bought pad splits with the DSCR loan.
We've seen two properties to be more common. Ideally, two rentals. We've gotten away with one rental. We used a credit sponsor too. One rental, but they also had a homestead.
Hmm.
Um, that was the big thing. And then, like, we raised money on fractional, where at first they said that was fine. And then when it gets down to the wire, 2 days before closing, they're like, wait, no, you can't do this.
Yeah.
So we've seen some weird things like on proof of funds, or not really proof of funds, but the bank statements
Hmm.
showing the liquidity. Um, we were able to get through it, but that was a little interesting. And so, okay, I guess at the moment, those lenders, they're still using LTR as when they're calculating the rents, at least on everything you're seeing so far.
Yeah, at least if you're looking to purchase an existing pad split, yeah. Now, I have seen some lenders that say we'll use, like 120% of the LTR if you're refinancing the property and you've had it for 12 months. So, but yeah, at least on the purchase side, I've just seen LTRs.
Okay. And then for anyone listening, LTR, it's the 12-month rent rate. So even though it's eight people paying rent and it's substantially higher than what a normal 12-month rental is, the lenders are cautiously using market rent for a 1 year lease. Do you see, I know Airbnb, like they have Air DNA and stuff like that,
Mhm.
where lenders more commonly they'll use like those numbers for revenue instead of LTR. Do you see any lenders kind of, I know you mentioned the 120%, but do you see like, would they use pad split data, for example?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Well, maybe that one lender, but no, no. I think generally, from what I know, they're not using any kind of platforms that help with like co-living or pad split numbers. They're really really new at it.
Okay. And then, so not any lender names, nothing like that, but who are the lenders? Like, what type of demographic are these lenders? Because it
Yeah.
is a little more risk appetite. Like, who's on the backside of these loans? And again, not names, nothing like that, but like, is it hedge funds? Like, who would you describe?
So it's a range. Now, there's brokerages and correspondent lenders and all these different things. So generally what I've seen is these lenders are owned by investment companies, and those companies just have huge lines of like warehouse lines of credit and just have
Mm,
hundreds of millions of dollars. That's generally what I see. Um, Now I'm sure I haven't asked, but I can check if some of them are more hedge funds. But generally, from what I see, it's just big lines of warehouse credit, similar to a lot of hard money lenders. But I think hard money will usually typically have more of a fund model. That's not what I've seen with DSCR. Not to say that it's not prevalent, just I'm not quite sure, at least with our lenders. And what a lot of people may not realize is generally, like a majority of the time, if you're getting a hard money loan, these lenders are selling the note pretty soon after you close. So the point to that is to say that kind of shows a little more that they're generally using like warehouse lines of credit because they don't want to pay the high interest rate. So that's kind of what I would lean more towards if we're trying to see like, well, who's backing these lenders. Generally, that.
What's your best guess on who the ultimate note holder is?
Oh man, BlackRock.
BlackRock. All comes back to BlackRock.
It all leads back. I mean, I'm not like the expert at secondary markets and going into all that yet, but they're definitely a big, as far as I know, them and a couple other investment companies whose names I just don't remember
Yeah.
are huge buyers of notes in the secondary market.
Okay. All right. I guess just a couple more questions.
Yeah.
So before we jumped on, I showed you the document of like one of our 10 beds, 10 bed, 10 baths, one kitchen, two kitchenettes, two laundry rooms,
Hmm.
one of our bigger co-living properties. Um, they still use three bed, three bath comps. What are the odds in the next 5 years? Do you see potentially like this being valued as like small multifamily, like a 5 unit or something like that? Because then it dramatically changes the appraisal value.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. I I am more optimistic and hopeful, especially if we have multiple years. Like 5 years, I think would be long enough to kind of see some sort of guidelines change, or at least some people and lenders starting to work together to get a little creative on like, okay, well, how, like you're saying, how can we see this more in an income based aspect rather than totally relying on the appraised value? So I would say I'm pretty hopeful. Now, I'm hopeful for people's innovation and ingenuity and just wanting to get more of these loans and seeing how much Pace and Jamil and other real estate uh, kind of big influencers are in the space, and especially since they're pushing this so much, I would definitely like that's kind of where I'm looking towards as well when I'm saying that I'm pretty optimistic. They can
Blue Ocean.
definitely shift a lot of things.
Um, so in addition to that document, I showed you another part that Pace and I spoke on is like how to kind of get that ball rolling, those first dominoes.
Hmm.
We're talking about selling one of those 1010s, keeping it arm's length, but selling it to another part or another business that we own,
Hmm.
but it's priced at that valuation.
Mm.
Um, and that's kind of why, oh, essentially that's a big reason why we're buying in Houston, like keeping it very narrow,
Yeah.
is so we can like kind of create that tidal wave of this new valuation model. I guess, in your opinion, what would that need to look like for us to successfully sell a property and then we buy it maybe with other investors
Hmm.
but at this, different valuation?
Mm.
Could we like seller finance it so that, or like I'm trying to think of every way possible with a new loan, but there's also like a seller carry or I don't know.
That's yeah, that's interesting because a lot of lenders, at least right now, they if you're trying to buy a property with a DSCR loan, they're going to look at the purchase price and the appraised value, and they're going to go based off of the lower of the two. So if you're selling this house, let's say the appraisal said at first it was worth 230, but you're saying no, this is worth 900,000 because of all the income that it's generating. going to be a little weird because a lot of the lenders will say, well, we're going based off of the appraisal because otherwise it just looks like a kind of like a straw buyer kind of thing. So maybe I think.
So what if there's 12 months of data, like it's been filled for 12 months operational, and then like we pull small multifamily comps and we're using those cap rates, like 5 units, 10 units kind of thing. Do you think that's plausible, or like, well, I guess what ingredients do we need to make this chocolate chip cookie work?
Hmm. I think one thing I would probably look into is just zoning. Like if you're going to be adding different bedrooms, can it be zoned differently? Because if it's zoned residential, I think that's where I would foresee the hang up, because they're saying, no, it's a residential family. So we have to use a regular appraisal. But maybe if we can get it zoned differently, or I think that's at least the first thing that comes to mind. Not to say that that's what we have to do, but
Because that's I guess the third or fourth other reason we really like Houston is the zoning. It's
mhm.
very, very open compared to anywhere else we're seeing currently.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering why you're really focused on Houston because no one in your team is here. Everyone's
Yeah, not yet. There's someone will end up there. But yeah, those the other big thing is like a lot of the other parts in the US, there's all these rules about like the number of unrelated people living under one roof,
yeah.
that kind of stuff. For Houston, it's pretty much just non-existent.
Yeah, it's kind of the Wild West. I think that would be a good place to check first, and that's something that I would check on as well. Because I do know, or it's a possibility. We got an inquiry recently of somebody saying, "Hey, I have this single family home, but it's zoned as like office district because
Mm.
just it's on Main Street and such." And so they were trying to get a loan, but they're trying to get more of like a residential loan. And so I spoke with a couple lenders, and a couple of them were saying, "Yeah, we can do that." So if they can use a single family that's zoned as office district and having a long-term rent and long-term tenant in there, I I'm confident, or at least I'm getting a little more confident that we can kind of finagle some of those things, but the other way around.
Yeah, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I guess then lastly, to circle back to our original at the beginning of the video, what would you say is the number one mistake either maybe investors are making when trying to get a co-living DSCR, or on the flip side, the number one mistake you think lenders are making on like
Mm.
they're creating their own bottleneck where they could be getting a lot more business, but they're almost self-sabotaging in a sense by
Mm.
being too frugal. I don't, what would you say is just the number one thing that you see that needs fixing?
This is totally biased because I don't. Oh, I'm not necessarily the lender yet, lending out my own money and hiring underwriters to make sure that my money is safe. But at least on my end of things, I feel lenders are a little too frugal with their underwriting and with their guidelines, especially when it comes to co living models. Now, I can see it if somebody is just buying a property and saying, hey, these are the projected numbers, here's the pro forma. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get, this much for each bedroom. That's where I can see it's similar to like an Airbnb where you can't go based off of projected numbers. But if somebody has a history and not only experience with co-living, but if somebody also has 12 months or more, I see that lenders still going based off of long-term rental comps at that point where it's the same. It's similar to a short-term rental. With a short-term rental, they will look at the 12 months of data and then they'll account for seasonality and say, okay, we'll take 80% of the annual income or the rental income that you're getting. So I think that they're being a little too strict on that end when it comes to co-living. Yeah. So because again, like what we were saying earlier, if somebody's trying to buy a pad split or trying to buy a co-living and it's an existing PadSplit or an existing co-living property that is being run, those are it's way more difficult to actually use their numbers.
Mm.
So that's the biggest thing. If lenders could just see it more like a short-term rental and say, "Hey, I see the history that it has. It has 12 months. That seems pretty solid," and move forward, I feel like that would just work better.
Yeah, that's we bought a property in Atlanta, and it's been a pad split for 3 years, and we still used LTR. We're like, all right, yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
So
exactly.
it does seem outdated. It's
Hmm.
like 3 years is 36 months of info. But yeah, if anything, it just gives us, I guess, more time to buy at this outdated price, is how I look at it.
Yeah.
If I want to look at this optimistically, is okay, we can buy at single family comps, but eventually, one day, I'm going to wake up and it's the whole portfolio is now valued based on income,
Yep.
and I make millions of dollars that morning.
I'm
That's
confident.
my optimistic way to look at it. So,
Yeah, I think it's good. And again, I'm not a fortune teller or anything, but I'm pretty optimistic that sooner or later, at least something's going to change. Either they're going to start using more of a income based valuation rather than and more of like a commercial appraisal, or they are going to use the pad split co living actual rental numbers. I think one of them is at least going to happen in the next few years. And if not, that's sad. But
yeah, I I'd hope that PadSplit spearheads this. Like
mhm.
they have all the data, and it's like if they created, vertical integration, if they did it, an in-house lending at that valuation, I don't know. So,
Yeah.
okay, Jada, what is the best way if someone wants to reach out to you? What is the best way if they want to get a DSCR through you or anything like that? How do they contact you?
Yeah, I would say for all the people, really Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Those are the three places I'm on. So choose one of them that you're on most frequently and message me there. Everything is my name, which is the benefit of having somewhat unique name. So yeah, it's a Jada Thoele on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I check all of them pretty frequently.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining.
Thank you.